right, now on the count of three, we're going to do in unison. We're going to say good morning to everyone. 1, 2, 3. Good morning! Oh, great! In unison, just about. At this time, if you have phones, please silence your phones. And also, there is not a pretest. You will evaluate the presentations following the presenters once they give their presentations. Did you know that April is Minority Health Month? And the national theme is, does anybody know, including the sites? What is the national minority health theme? It's going to go along with these two ideal presenters today. Active. Well, that's a presentation by one of our presenters, but the national theme is active and healthy. There you go. And the goal today, basically the goal of it is to emphasize health benefits of doing just even small, minute exercising, like house cleaning. We had a presenter once before, a doctor. He said, instead of, sometimes when you're trying to clean your furniture, speed it up a bit. And I thought, I took that. I said, okay, because you know what? When you vacuum a house, you're burning some calories. And so today, before we get to the demonstration piece, we have an inspirational message. Our presenter has presented before last year in MEMA, and I told her afterwards, I said, you know something? I said, you helped me bring my blood pressure down a little bit. Thank you. So I'm definitely glad to have Dr. Amber L. Howlett. She marries her certifications and degrees in psychology, counseling, and yoga to serve in her multiple roles as an administrator, training facilitator, board member, yoga teacher, but faculty and executive director of a nonprofit organization. Internally committed to humanity, she is passionate about serving others in ways that allow them to live their best lives in spite of any circumstances. Her service is delivered in a style that is inspirational, steeped in humor, and filled with unique self-expression. Dr. Howlett's signature is to utilize practical application of yogic philosophy, where they're applying it to the field of medicine for medical professionals, encouraging self-care among caretakers, and issues of aging with seniors, or when assisting middle schoolers to address the pressures of tweenhood. Her ultimate goal is to inspire others to change their own narratives in order to remove the limits of barriers, whether self-imposed or otherwise created. Without further ado, please welcome back Ms. Amber L. Howlett.
Good morning and thank you. I am so happy to be back and to see faces. So thank you for being very welcoming. Thank you for asking me to come back. It is an honor and a pleasure to stand before you. I always start by thanking the ancestors for being here, because there's a lot of love, there's a lot of sacrifice that worked to get me here. And I don't ever want to pretend that it was by my own whatever that I'm here. So thank you, ancestors. Thank you for standing tall, and because of you, I stand even taller. So thank you.
All right.
So what I want to talk to you today about is living like a revolutionary. And why this is important is because my motivation is, so many times I'm from East St. Louis, and I make that distinction really very proudly, versus St. Louis. There is a difference. And the difference in being is I meet so many people, whether they're from East St. Louis, whether they're from New York, whether they're from Jamaica, and there are these narratives, these stories that they tell themselves, and sometimes these aren't the best stories that people are telling or living. And so it ends up changing the way that they're able to do things. And so what I'd like to do is be able to speak with people and challenge the way in which they see things and the way that they think about things. Because I believe that if you start changing the way that you see and believe, then everything falls in line and everything else changes. So before we can talk about even being active and healthy, everything starts in the mind, if you allow me to tell it. So maybe that's the psychology in me that says that, but there's something to thought. My mother used to always tell me, and I bring my little bag up here because my mom had this made for me. So this is always my way of having my mom with me whenever I bring this bag. But my mom used to work our nerves. She would wake us up in the morning and she would sing this god awful song to us about motivating us to get up in the morning. And then before we walked out the door, she would always tell us, what you think about, you bring about. So I'm going to leave that with you today. And that's even biblical. As a man thinketh, so he does. Okay? So today we're just going to talk about challenging thoughts. So when we talk about the revolution and revolutionaries, what do we tend to think about? Like, what are some first things that come to mind? Change?
Change.
Okay. Okay, change and challenges. Very good. Okay, so let's look at some of the definitions of revolutionary. So if you look at the word revolution, did you ever notice that the word love is in there? It's actually spelled backwards. R-E-V-O-L, there's love in revolution. So I point that out to you to say that whenever it is that you are faced with challenges, you can't face them without love. Okay? So when we look at the word revolutionary and we look at the definition, and I know that your printouts may be a little small, but revolutionary, the definition is radically new or innovative, outside or beyond established procedures and principles. And radical is favoring drastic reforms. So I speak to you today to say whatever it is that you're doing has to be sweeping. Approaching self-love can't be for the faint of heart. It's not easy to have a mirror held up to who you are, especially in a society that really does capitalize off of our insecurities. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is sit through a TV show and count how many commercials you see about how much beauty cream we need to fix our wrinkles, how much, and I don't have an issue with that at all, but it's not because they're trying to necessarily make us better. It's just that they're trying to sell us on we're not good enough. That's where I'm coming from. So whether you sit and you count commercials about how much beauty cream we need for wrinkles, how much dye we need for our gray hair, how many hair plugs we need because our hair is falling out, whatever it is, we have a culture that really feeds off of our insecurities. And so there's nothing that happens in this universe by happenstance. And there's nothing that is said or done that does not affect us, especially if we're not conscious of it. So if we're constantly getting these messages that are played for us by society, all of that begins to get into our psyche, and we begin to believe that. I'm too fat to do fill in a blank. I'm not smart enough to do fill in a blank. I can't go anywhere because I don't have fill in a blank. And you begin saying and doing these things even before you even notice that you're doing them. So today we talk about radical self-love and being revolutionary about it because we want to make sweeping changes. Okay, so the picture of this little girl, and I wish we had it on a really large screen so that you could see it, but this little girl in this head wrap and she has her hands out. I think that this is a really very dynamic picture of this child because this child looks like there's nobody in the world who can tell me what it is that I should think about myself. And so I came across two quotes, and one of them said, "It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you are not." And Dr. Maya Angelou says the real difficulty is to overcome how you think about yourself. Now let that digest for just a moment. If I went and asked each and every one of you individually if you loved yourself, I bet you everybody in here would say yes, wouldn't they? But I bet you the more that we talked, the more we get a little bit more convinced that we don't love ourselves as much as we really think that we do. Okay? So let's start talking about what this self-love looks like. Okay. So there's an equation and some math to self-love and looking at that. Thank you for pulling that up. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is addition, and then subtraction, multiplication, and then analysis. So for the very first one with addition, discovering what it is that you need. I Love Lucy, and there's something about Lucille Ball that will come up later. When I was growing up, on a side note, there were many shows that I could not watch in my grandmother's home because there were no people of color that showed on there. So therefore, we had a lot of discussions in my house versus watching TV. But I Love Lucy was one of the shows that we were able to watch because Lucy married someone who was Cuban. And at the time, my grandmother was telling me what a really revolutionary and radical movement that was for her to make, especially for her career in that time, to marry somebody who didn't look like her. So Lucy was a hero of sorts in the household. So in this particular episode, which is one of my favorites, so she's pretending to be Harpo Marx, okay? And so they're like in this mirror-like image with one another doing these actions, and he's trying to prove that he's himself and she's trying to convince him that she is him, okay? So this is the time that we hold a mirror up to who we are. Now, it's not always easy to have a mirror held up to ourselves, all right? The very first thing that we tend to think of when that mirror is held up is all the things that are wrong instead of all the things that are right. Am I right? Typically what happens is when people pay us compliments, I like your shirt. Oh, I done had this for 7 years and it's got a hole on the left side. And I mean, well, doggone, all they said was that they liked the shirt. They didn't ask for the whole narrative about the shirt. All you simply had to do was say, thank you. Okay? So again, see this self-love thing? See when I said I asked all of y'all if y'all loved yourself? And everybody in here said yes, but everybody can relate to this whole compliment thing. All right, so holding this mirror up to yourself. So the question becomes, who do you think you are? So you may just jot a note down about who do you think you are? And your next question is, who do you think you are not? And you may not even have answers for some of these, but at least it begins the wheels to turning. Next, we'll look at what are some of the voids in my life. When I talk about voids, what I'm speaking of is what is it that you are missing? So allow me to give you an example of that. There are people who stay mad at their significant other, husband, friend, because they are looking to that friend or that significant other to fill a hole in their life, to make them happy. Newsflash. Spoiler alert. There is nobody on this earth that can make you happy. There's just not. So if you're looking for happiness externally, outside of yourself, that's an issue of self-love. We got to rethink that. So looking at all the voids that exist in our life, whether it's I don't have enough stuff to do, I'm bored. Whether it's I need love. What are the voids that you have? Next question is, what am I passionate about? When we speak of passion, or when I speak of passion, what I'm saying is, what is it that fuels you? What is it that moves you? What is it that you would die for even, or fight tooth and nail to protect? And what brings your heart joy? So one of the things that brings my heart joy, I don't have any children at all. Never had a desire to have any. But I have 5 nephews and nieces, and I call myself a village mama because I deal with more kids and work with more kids than I could ever have in my lifetime. One of the things that brings me joy is to hear kids laughing. I love to hear them laugh, no matter what and no matter what age they are. That's one of the things that brings my heart joy. So sitting and really thinking about what is it that once you hear it, just instantly, it springs something up. Something rises up in you. All right, so as we continue to hold this mirror up and looking at discovering what it is that you need, now we move on to a little bit of subtraction. So if you look at this particular slide and you see that there is a kitten or a little cat looking in the mirror, but there's really a lion that's staring back. Some days it's okay to be the cat. But most of the days, we probably want to be lions. Okay? And we're not living up to the fullest of what we could be. So now you begin to ask yourself, what toxic behaviors do I have? So what could toxic behaviors be? Toxic behaviors might be the way that we eat, even. Toxic behaviors might be the way that we talk to ourselves. Toxic behaviors might be some of the things that we do behind closed doors that we would never allow other people to see us do because we'd be utterly embarrassed by it. Next, we look at what toxic people are in my circle. All right, I'm going to step back because y'all might want to start throwing things. All right, so toxic people might even be family members. I mean, the truth is what it is. Okay? So if we continue to stay in situations that we know are toxic for us, we need to ask ourselves why. What are we getting from that? Why do we do it? Unless there is a gun or some other sort of something that's held to you that could be detrimental to your life, you aren't forced to do it. You have permission. You have free will to make a decision about who gets to get your time and your company and your love. And you should be really very selfish with that. If you think about your time and your love and who you are, think of it as an investment. If you know you only have $100 in the bank and you're afraid of going to jail, there's no way that you're going to go out and spend like $1,200 writing checks and doing all these things because you know they're coming to get you, right? So be the same way with your time. You know, if somebody is always coming and it's like they deducted $1.50, they deducted $23 here, but they're never putting anything in where they're adding $50 here after they took 23 out. Might need to do some reevaluation about who's in your circle with that. Next, how do I process my emotions and my feelings? I should probably step back again too and duck down. All right, so how does this show up when it becomes a little bit toxic? Perhaps it may even be I process my let me speak personally because I don't want to point anybody out. One of the things that I like to do, and I really have to catch myself, I still have to work with myself, is when I'm processing an emotion, I might eat. And I might eat a whole lot. Because I'm here to tell you, a cupcake tastes really good after somebody has made me angry, but that's just me. And for that moment, I forget all about how angry somebody made me feel because I'm caught up in that cupcake feeling. Or another way that I neglect to process my emotions and my feelings, I have a whole bunch of jobs that I do. Whenever I start taking on way more than I know that I should, it's because it's real easy for me to avoid the other stuff I really don't want to think about. But I know y'all don't have that issue. That's just Ms. Amber's issue. Okay? So these are all things about how do I really process my emotions and my feelings. There are people who can't be alone with themselves. Always got to be with somebody. Always got to be up under somebody. Why? Because it kills them to be by themselves. Because now I got to sit with myself. I don't even like my own company. So I'm just going to go and be with somebody else. Okay? So if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with it, but let's sit and talk about why you don't want to sit by yourself. Because there's a reason for it. So I point these things out, amongst other things, because these are the ways in which we become untethered from the earth. Okay, so if you think of yourself as like holding this helium balloon or a whole big set of them that's enough where you can float, 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 and just keep going until you float away. This is exactly what happens to us. And not in the literal sense, but when you're untethered from the earth and you're going along and you're doing everything, all the things that you always do, and then all of a sudden you have a breakdown one day. Whether it's a crying spell that you have, whether you get really very angry and you lash out at somebody. Nobody in here does that though. But whether you do those things, those are when we become untethered from the earth and we don't even realize it. So one of the ways to always test that is to always, whenever you are in a state, whether you're angry or whatever it is, always move to the edge of your chair and put your feet flat on the ground. As a matter of fact, everybody, let's try that now. Come to the edge of your seat just a little bit. And press your feet into the ground consciously. And when I say consciously, it's really feeling your feet against the floor. When's the last time you did that? We're so busy that we don't have time to even do that. And it's the simplest of things. You can do that while you're watching TV. Okay, so sit for a minute with your feet pressed against the floor. You can bring your chin down towards your chest. And just breathe for a moment. Okay, so as you begin to breathe, begin counting your breaths just a bit. So perhaps you're inhaling and counting to 3, and exhaling, counting to 3. We'll do that 2 more times where we're inhaling to 3 and exhaling to 3. And when you're done, you can get back comfortable in your chairs and bring your attention back forward. It's a small, minute moment. Nothing happened out in the world that we had to go fix. Didn't cost you anything. It was just a moment. So always be able to check in with the self to check whether you're untethered from the earth. Okay, next we have multiplication, discovering what you need and doing more of it. All right, so this is your fill in the blank. I would like to do blank again because I loved to do it. So remember those things that you used to love to do and you did it frequently, and then all of a sudden you just stopped doing it. You don't know why you stopped doing it. You just stopped doing it. So perhaps it was making time to go to the park to walk around. Perhaps it was even hanging out with some friends. Maybe it was even hanging out by yourself. Perhaps it was knitting or crocheting, some needlework. I'm a knitter, that's why I throw that out. And so at this point of examining what it is that you used to love to do that you no longer do anymore, take a moment and make a promise to yourself that you will adopt something that is special to you, something that you love to do. And now here's where I put the clincher on it. It can't be something that you do for somebody else. It has to be something you do for yourself. So now. It can't be, I'm gonna knit my grandbaby some socks. Nope, gotta be something for you. So why this becomes important is because it gets us back into ourselves and gets us into nurturing ourselves. So remember when I talked about those voids that exist in life? This is one of the ways of filling the voids, filling yourself up, nurturing yourself, not looking to anything and anybody else to nurture you, but being able to give it to yourself first. Next is, what have I been knowingly neglecting? Step back again. Maybe it's house cleaning. Maybe it's cleaning out those closets.
Yes. Amen.
Could be any number of things. I will tell you what is said, though. It's said that whenever there is clutter around you, that it also helps to create a cluttered mind. And what a cluttered mind looks like is when you have these racing thoughts and you can't stop one thought from flowing into the next, and it makes you feel so very overwhelmed. That's what cluttered thinking may look like. So there's nothing saying that your house or your environment has to be pristine. Nobody is coming around with white gloves and doing the little marks. Nobody's doing that. But it's where you can be and where it looks like it's in a place where it's livable to you. And when I say livable to you, where you thrive in that environment, where you actually live in it and not just exist in it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. I often hear people say you only live once. That's not true. You live every single solitary day. And depending on your belief system is that you only die once. But even if you believe in reincarnation, you don't come back in the same body. So technically, you do only die once. So remember that every day you get the opportunity to live. What is that going to look like? As long as you have breath in your body, whether you have movement in your limbs or not, there's still time and opportunity to live and to make your life whatever it is that you want it to be, because it starts here before anything else happens. Active and healthy is not happening if it's not happening up here first. How do you show up for yourself? All right. So question, would you be your own best friend? Okay. And probably because you all are really very good to other people. So you're like, of course I would be my own best friend. Now, I want you to stand outside of yourself and look at you and think about all the messages that you tell yourself. And now ask yourself, would I really want to be my own best friend? Okay? So, and the example that I'm going to give is sometimes there are things that we say to ourselves that we would never say to a friend ever. You put on an outfit and you standing in the mirror and then you picking out like where the roll is and, oh, I look too fat in this and I look. Chances are you probably wouldn't tell your friend that. If she walked through your door and she was wearing a certain something, you probably wouldn't look at her and be like, that roll is really sticking out on the left side. Probably not. Okay, so when you, and you would probably say, oh girl, we should go walking together, versus you really need to get active. All right, so when you talk about how do I show up for myself, it's what are those messages that I'm giving to myself? It's, are there times when I flake out on me when I should be showing up? Let me give you an example, work. So whether you're still going to work, whether you're retired or whatever the case may be, I would be willing to believe that most of us showed up to work practically every day. There may have been some time when we had some sick days and things of that nature, even if you ran your own business, but you were there. People depended on you. You were waiting on a paycheck. You were there. If you were a teacher, you knew kids were dependent on you. But then it comes to you. Okay, so now you've had a long day and you need to eat. And you know you need some good nutritional food because food is energy and it's fuel and it gets you to what it is that you need to do. It's also medicine, okay? So you're tired and you like, I don't feel like cooking. I'm just going to go ahead and drive through, and I want to say a place's name, but I'm not going to say their name. I'm just going to drive through so-and-so's drive-through and grab whatever. Okay? And so then you don't even pick the healthiest of choices that they have. Okay?
You deserve it.
And so again, and I go to, there is nothing wrong with having a treat every now and then. It's not. But if that looks like 5 to 7 days a week that you're making that decision, might need to examine it and how I'm showing up for myself. If it becomes, oh, I'm too tired, I got up too late to exercise this morning. I mean, an exercise may be 3 to 5 minutes. May not be that 30 minutes or an hour. All you need is movement in the body to do something. But if you're like, I woke up too late, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's 2022 and tomorrow still ain't came, that's how you're showing up for yourself. Okay? So asking yourself, how do you show up for yourself? And how many times and in how many ways do you shortchange yourself? Because when we cut corners, we don't cut corners against nobody else but ourselves. Nobody else in the world would ever have to know, but we know it. So when our hearts are saying, I need to be active, I need to move, I need to be healthy, I ain't cheating that. It knows. When you are stressed out, even if you look fine on the outside and you're walking around, nobody else knows, the self knows, the body knows. All right, so now moving to analysis and still with self-love. So self-love is a marathon. It's going to be versus a race. It's going to be something that you're doing for a really very long time. You're not going to run it and it's not going to be done in 5 minutes. It's going to be something that you do for all of your days. So every day, vow to yourself to do 3 to 5 minutes of quiet time. Now, there are 24 hours in a day. So even if we just looked at 1 hour with 3 to 5 minutes, that's not a whole lot of time. But 3 to 5 minutes to just hear absolutely nothing but yourself. So I've heard that prayer is a time of talking to God, and I'm not proselytizing at all and trying to force God upon anybody because I don't know what people's belief systems are. But prayer is said to be your time to talk to God. Your 3 to 5 minutes of quiet time, which is quiet reflection and meditation, I've heard that that's the time that you hear from God. So sometimes life is going on so much, whether it's the TV, whether it's people talking, whatever it may be, that we can't possibly hear what it is that we need to hear to get insight. So when we talk about looking on the outside for what we need, a lot of what we need is already in internally, but we're not tuned in and tapped in. If we're untethered, if we're distracted, if we're unfocused, we can possibly know what it is that we need. So 3 to 5 minutes of quiet time. Compliment someone. It should not hurt your feelings to be able to tell a woman or a man that they're beautiful or that they're handsome or that you like their tie, you like their hair, whatever it may be. Compliment somebody. It's human connection. It's also building someone up, especially in a culture where it seems to be more entertaining to tear people down. So there's nothing wrong with while you're investing in yourself, because when you compliment people and you see the reaction and people smile, you can't help but smile. I always think about, I don't have an issue with complimenting people. I can see so much beauty in everybody. I can just like point out, go around the room and pick out something on everybody. But I remember complimenting this woman one time, and I told her that she was beautiful, because I thought she was. And she said, well, I ain't gay. Well, sir. So I said, oh, okay. And I said, but even if I was, I wouldn't have chose you. But I was just saying that you were really pretty. And so then she was like, oh, well, I didn't mean it like that. Well, in what way did you mean it? So even really being conscious of, and so this is where I have to tell myself when people have those reactions, because it used to be a time when that didn't make me really happy, when people would have such harsh reactions, but I have to bow to the teacher in that. And when I say that, it means that I just learned a lesson. So I learned a lesson in patience, and also to be able to self-regulate, because my blood pressure shouldn't soar just because she got some issues over here that she's working through. So if you receive a harsh something from somebody, again, say to yourself, I'm bowing to the teacher in that, because there's a teacher in all things. Accept a compliment without giving a whole history of whatever. Nobody cares that your shoes are 15 years old. They really don't. They just thought they looked nice. That's all they said. Okay, replace the negative. So probably all of us have something in our lives that's less than ideal that's going on. Whether it's that you're dealing with your own illness, whether it's that you're dealing with somebody else's illness, whether you're dealing with somebody else's bad attitude, whether you stuck with some kids that ain't yours, but you got to take care of them because somebody done left them for you. Whatever the case may be, we all have something that's probably a little less than what we want it to be. So it's looking for the positive even in those situations. And why that becomes important is because it's really very easy to stay stuck where you are. So once you come up with that one negative thing, it's about 50 million others that's going to come to you. So what this may look like are the what ifs. So the what ifs are, it begins to rain. well, I don't want to get in my car because what if I get in an accident? Then if I get in an accident, my premiums are going to go up. And then if I go to the hospital, then I'm not going to be able to work for 2 weeks. And you haven't even left your house. It's raining. So all it's doing is raining. Okay? So look for the positive in all things. Because it's there. You just have to look for it. Say no. I give you permission to say no. If nobody else is giving you that permission, I give you permission to say no. Why? Because you can.
All right.
You don't have to save anybody from anything. If somebody's health or whatever is in detriment, probably none of us are medical doctors in here. But even if we are, we don't know medical history to save anybody. So a lot of times there's no need of us losing sleep, stretching ourselves thin, wearing ourselves bald. Because it's not going to change it. So say no. Be selfish with your time sometime. Are there times when we have to extend ourselves? Absolutely. Are there times when we should extend ourselves? Without question. My personal belief is that we all have a responsibility to one another. Every last one of us. So when people say, I don't have no kids, and so, they can be over there doing what they want to do. Yes, you do. They're all our kids. Like it or not. So we all have a responsibility. But learn the art of saying no. It's non-negotiable. I said no. I meant no. Now, you might catch me another day, and it might be another answer, but today is no. And remembering who you are in all things. You are nobody's doormat.
All right.
Really?
You are nobody's doormat. People cannot walk over you or wipe their feet on you unless you lay down first. Thank you, Dr. King.
All right.
Nobody can ride your back unless you bend over. Thank you, Dr. King. Remember who you are. And if you haven't gotten to the point of being the person that you want to be, because again, this is a marathon, that's okay. It's all right. We're works in progress, and we always should be. Who you are also is not who you once were. I'm going to say that one more time. Who you are is not who you once were. Probably none of us are ever going to go back to being 5 years old. So at 5, I had all the agility in the world. I could jump around, do all these things. I ain't 5 no more. Okay? So I can't talk about the joys of being 5 years old and all the stuff that I used to be able to do and how cute I used to be able to get my parents to do all the stuff I wanted them to do. That time has passed. But it does not mean that there is anything wrong with the me today. So remembering who you are. And knowing that in all of this, that the body is going to change. And it changes every single solitary day. And it can change from minute to minute. So, most of the time when we look at that, people look at that really very negatively. Almost as if it is a loss of something. So I want to challenge the way that you think about that also. I think when I was here at MEMA, I told you that I had knee surgery a short time ago. So in having the knee surgery, prior to that, I thought I was like one of the baddest things walking around. And that, in terms of being able to move when I wanted to move and do all the things I wanted to do, like when nothing stopping me, I was good. And then knee injury came. And then they said, you need surgery. And then the doctor told me, it's going to be about 2 years before you recover. And even then, it's not going to be a full recovery. It's going to be a whole lot better than it was, but you'll never be 100%. I'll show you, because yes, I am. Let me tell you. He was right. He was real right. And it really bothered me to no end for a very long time. And so what happened as a result, I don't have any issues really of telling what happens with my life. So what happens as a result of that is that I gained a good 15 pounds, and that was all depression weight. Okay, and it was because I couldn't move around the way that I wanted to do. Yoga means a whole lot to me. So I became untethered from the earth, and I just really checked out. Like, I was there every day, but really I was checked out because I couldn't do all the stuff that I used to be able to do in order to keep myself channeled in the way that I was. Okay, 15 extra pounds on a knee surgery is not helpful. Let me tell you, just if y'all should ever have to have, extra weight is not helpful on that. So what it took was being able to get checked back in and being in control of that. So even today when I got here, I drove in this morning. And so I come from Illinois. One of the things that I asked was for a room so that I could do yoga because I need to stretch after the drive. So it was something in yoga that I did that I felt it in that knee. And I said, okay, let me stop. I got to bow to the teacher in this knee, because I had to relearn my body a whole different way. And so I'm giving that message to you. The body is going to change, and there's nothing wrong with that. But bow to the teacher that is there. And what happens is it makes you a better person in terms of learning this new you. So you may not be able to do something the same way, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it anymore. So there's a saying that says, my grandmother used to say it, and I cringe now to say it, about how there's more than one way to kill a cat. I'm going to go with peel a potato. So there's more than one way to peel a potato, okay? So just because I peel it a different way than I used to, doesn't the potato still get peeled? Okay, so that's the importance of it. So learning you, this ever-changing body, and looking at these changes that are occurring, not with shame, not with a lack of dignity, but looking at them for what they are. And still loving and nurturing yourself through that. And knowing that if you should fall off, you can get right back on. It's okay. There's nobody holding you back except for who? You. Absolutely. Absolutely. There was nobody there every day telling me you can't learn a different way to work out. That was all me. And them cupcakes were still good. They didn't help. Not help. All right. So putting it all together, radical self-love and a commitment to you is really very revolutionary. And if somebody should come to you and they want to tell you who you are not to them, I would like for you to tell them that is really counter-revolutionary. And I don't want to hear it. And that's your choice to tell them that. Because you don't have to listen to the garbage that people feed you. I give you permission to back out of that. So don't just stand there and tune it out. Tell them it's not okay. You cannot dump your garbage here. Amen. Now, turn around and tell yourself that too. Self, your garbage is not welcomed here. Taking time for you and saying no. Because when you say no to something, you are saying yes to yourself for something else. Even if that means that you just get to sleep a little longer. The body needs rest. There's nothing wrong with that. You get to be with yourself. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. And it's also telling society that these messages that they're giving you about how we should magnify your insecurities, how you have outside needs, how you need to pay us your money so you can feel better about you, that's telling them that that's garbage too. So you want to do revolutionary acts? Buck the system and tell them, I ain't got to feed into your whole money pit and give you that because you told me I need something. It's tapping into you and finding out what you really need. What do you say you need? Okay. And finally, I will leave you with a quote from Lucille Ball. Again, I love Lucille Ball. My bedroom is a throwback to old black Hollywood because I grew up in glamour with my mom and my grandmother. And so I have Eartha Kitt, Dorothy Dandridge, Lena Horne, a number of people and their photos in there. But I have quotes from other people. And I keep Lucille Ball around. She has a special space also. But Lucille Ball says to love yourself first and everything else falls into line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world. So again, when we go back to loving the self and loving the self radically and with everything it is that you have, it has to start there because active and healthy does not happen if you don't love you. active and healthy does not happen if the mental doesn't change. So again, it's not overnight. It's going to be something that we're doing for the rest of our days, but it's well worth it when the work is done. Any questions?
Let's go to satellite.
Okay.
Southeast Missouri, do you have any questions?
No questions, but we really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
St. Louis, any questions?
No questions. No questions.
Kansas City.
No question. I love myself.
Mid-Missouri, any questions?
St. Louis.
Okay. How do you focus? How do you focus on loving yourself when you block it out? When you block what out? I'm sorry.
Loving yourself. When you block that out in your mind, like when a person is really thinking about their heart and they are so damaged by the outside, they block it out. What do you do to transgress that into self-love?
Sure. I think that a lot of that really is sitting with the self, again, with being quiet and being able to go in to see what's going on. Because I think when we talk about trauma, is really what you're speaking of. I think when we talk about trauma, that there's a lot of external stuff that has happened that has really impacted the inside as well. And so really tapping into the self and asking what's needed. And sometimes, depending on the point of trauma, I think that it's also an issue of having outside support. So whether it's a counselor that you have on hand or whatever it is, whenever it is that you're going to do internal work, I think you start doing that work, but you have outside resources ready and on tap. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
Your question again, I didn't hear it.
Sure. Her question was, how do you begin the practice of self-love when you've blocked self-love out for so long because you've had so many traumatic things to occur? So trauma is really very real. It's for everybody, really. But when we start talking about communities of color, we are communities that really don't talk about trauma and how very real trauma is. And so a lot of us carry the stuff with us everywhere that we go. And so those messages began playing over and over again. So when we start talking about self-love, it's not that self-love is impossible. It's just that if you're impacted heavily by trauma, you need to make certain that you have support systems in place for that. Because sometimes going in a little deeper can be really hard for people to do. You have a question?
I do.
Okay.
How could you adjust to getting older? Weight gain, I'm not dealing
Sure.
with it very well.
Okay.
I'm 62,
Okay. Yay, 62.
and I'm not dealing with it very well at all. I don't, of course I don't look the same. I can't dress the same. I can't find, how would you say, my niche, so to speak, in clothing, because sometimes what you put on can also make you feel good. It can make you feel good, or it can make you feel bad.
Sure.
And so, I don't know, I'm having a very hard time dealing with that.
Okay, so my thoughts are to link up with someone who maybe has been where you are, or to even go out, and there are stylists that are there, or there are people who work in stores that know clothes really very well and what looks really good on people, that's like what they get paid to know. And so sitting there and having conversations with them about like what would look good with my particular body style. So beginning there, in terms of the weight gain that you were talking about, so perhaps it's even sitting down with a nutritionist and finding out like what are the things that are really very good for your body and what are the things that may present a challenge in terms of being the best for your body. Does that make sense? So I know that in terms of getting older, I can't eat the same way that I used to eat. Like I have to reduce the amount of calories that I eat, because if not, then it shows up as weight gain. And it's like a science experiment, you know? It's like I don't always know. I just have to be really very tapped in to see what's happening with me and then make adjustments on that end. But it was really very helpful to talk to professionals who knew food and who knew diet and nutrition that could tell me things. And then it made it a lot easier to kind of play with it, with that equation. So I think arming yourself with knowledge kind of empowers you versus like standing there on your own and trying to figure everything out. So again, I would say that as people, we can hold on to what our stories are, and we hold on with these death grips, and we never tell anybody these things that we're suffering from. When really all of us are having it, you know? So it's a matter of releasing those stories and telling people, other people that have faced it, so that they can help us through them. So whether it's professionals or somebody else that's personal, yeah, that would be my recommendation. You're welcome.
Any other questions from Mid-Missouri?
Yes, ma'am.
When you coming back?
Yeah.
You know, just
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love Lincoln. Whenever Miss Deborah or Miss Matthews wants to ask me to come back, I'll always come back.
you hear that?
I get it.
Yes, ma'am.
Speak at our graduation, because I think a lot of the students need to hear you. Like, honestly, speaking from a student's perspective, I just graduated. December, I walk in May.
Congratulations, dear.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
I think there's a lot of students that feel, especially going through college, that they have so many emotions, go through so much in college. It's like, oh, this is just the biggest hurdle, but you know, we got life next. So I think there's so many women, and it's so diversified in women, with so many different cultures. People kind of stick with their culture, their friends, and who they're comfortable around, but they don't really break way, you know, for self-love. That is not a conversation that's had often, especially with millennials. I think that's something that is very important that should be shared with the students as well.
Thank you. I have to defer to Miss Deborah for that, but I thank you. I appreciate that. I would love to come at any point in time, whether y'all have a campfire or whatever it is.
You should put it on your.
Let's go around to the,
Oh, thank you.
I was just going to comment. I had a very strong memory early growing up and all that, but I thank the Lord that He didn't let me internalize that. I was always able to push it off and think positively, and I think that's why I like you so much. We just gel because I think it's the same way. I really appreciated what you had to say today. Thank you. You're very
Thank you, Mr.
inspiring.
Flowers. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
satellites, going once, going twice.
Okay, this is the Sykeston office. Somebody else speaking?
Go ahead, Syston.
Okay, Sykeston office. We would be remiss if I did not report what our group is saying. They are saying how wonderful you are, and I know I'm just saying what some other people in the audience have said, but what one person said, I want to repeat, and that is that your wisdom that you're putting out to us older heads is wonderful, but it'd be great if you would go across that spectrum with it, from very young to the very old. What you're saying is that great.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Easy to follow.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I would like to say that I really do appreciate you as a young woman I love everything about you. I loved your presentation of yourself, and I loved your presentation of what you presented to us. But everything you said, I kind of already knew it because I go around, I like this kind of thing, and so I go to them all the time. And I have a lot, I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois.
Woo!
Storytellers in my family and so forth. But I want to say the motivation that you've given everyone is each one teach one.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
thank you so much. I mean, I know all about the village and it does take a village and I could go on and on too. But I really respect you as a young lady and I thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
bringing it to Jefferson City.
Thank you. Got good people behind me. I can't even take credit for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Charleston reporting.
All right,
Hey, Charleston.
Go right ahead.
We have no questions, but we want to say that we certainly enjoyed the presentation. It was educational as well as enjoyable, refreshing, renewal, and we just loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any more questions, comments? Going once? Going twice? A big round of applause for Dr. Amber.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Black women rock.